thousands of over the years, the ones who stood out were the ones who told short stories. The number one mistake candidates make is rambling. If candidates can learn to balance I and we and tell short stories that have a great point and a positive ending, some candidates tell stories that don't have a great ending, so make sure all the stories have a positive ending. Really, really well. So short stories and balance I and we.
That is really interesting. I had never heard the I and we part of that, but that makes total sense, because if somebody is up there saying, well, I did this and I did this, you immediately think, all right, what's in it for me? Enough about you.
Right.
Let's talk about me.
I give you of American Idol. Well, if they said, I were born with this talent, I, versus we did this together, I've had a lot of support, I was able to grow. So there's a balance of I and we, and those are the ones Americans vote for.
Absolutely. You're right. Great tips. Very great. Very good tips.
Thanks.
So do most people prefer one-on-one coaching, would you say, or do they prefer, group classes so they can practice and can get in front of an audience?
It all depends on the level of talent, but a lot of folks like to do a combination of one-on-one and group practice, especially if they're new to public speaking, because they feel comfortable one-on-one, and after they've gotten some experience on their feet and they've gotten some tips and they've been able to practice, then they want to practice in front of groups. So a combination of both one-on-one to get the specialized attention for a full day or two, for example, and then to get group practice. See, the good part about group practice is that it helps with calming the nerves.
Very true.
The only flip side to that is that there's that much less attention individually.
Good point. So a combination of both is probably the key.
Yeah.
Good. So when people have taken your classes, where would you say they've grown the most, or what comments have you gotten from some of your clients?
Where I would say they've grown the most?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely building confidence. Almost, I'd say 99.9% of the feedback forms that we get back, those two words, build confidence or built confidence or built much confidence that was needed, are in our forms. I mean, it's really, really quite rewarding on our end to see at the beginning of day one, their chins are down, their eyes are down, their hands are quivering, or they're playing with their jewelry, for example. I just saw that one in a class. And then by the end of day two, they feel like $1 million. They're using big gestures, they're animated, their chins are up, they're strong eye contact. It's really quite rewarding on our end to see these folks come out of their shell and to really tap into that potential so that they can express themselves well.
And they probably get some of those aha moments, too, like, gosh, this really isn't so difficult. I don't know why I'm so terrified to be up here.
One gentleman said, oh, this is so much easier than I thought, and at the end he wrote a nice email and said that the class changed his life personally and professionally.
I believe it. There's something about being able to get up in front of other people and look them in the eye and come across with authority and confidence. I mean, it does build your own internal confidence.
Right.
And it's something I think everybody wants to do and wants to work on. I don't know that all people do. Certainly you and I want to convince everybody that they should be.
Right.
So while the listeners are contemplating, I'm sure many of you out there are considering whether or not you need professional assistance with presentation skills or not, what would you suggest they do in the meantime? How could they practice to, starting today, what could they do to practice to get better at this?
Well, one suggestion is for any teleconference or meeting that they speak in the first 5-10 minutes. First 5-10 minutes of any meeting or any teleconference, just say something, because the perception that other people will have of them will improve. They'll think they're confident, they've got conviction, as long as it's appropriate. I mean, we don't want to cut off the leader of a teleconference. But the first appropriate moment, chime in, because lots of folks who fear public speaking think about, when am I going to chime in? When am I going to chime in? Wait, I'm going to chime in now. And then while they're thinking about it, somebody else says the same thing.
That's so true.
So they miss their golden opportunity. So the first appropriate moment, chime in, because then they can focus on the meeting instead of thinking about when they're going to talk.
That is a great point. Get it over with, basically. But then also give the perception that you are involved and engaged and listening and confident.
Yes, engaged, listening, and then whoever the person who is conducting that meeting, a teleconference, it almost helps them make their meeting run more smoothly because you're helping with that engagement and the interaction.
Very, very true.
It's looked as a team player response as well because you're helping the one conducting.
Now, I know you offer all the things that we're talking about now in your service that you provide, and I don't want to take too much because obviously we want to bring more people on as your clients, but are there any other tips that you wouldn't mind sharing with the listeners as far as anything else that they could do to get better at the art of public speaking?
Let's see. I would suggest practice, practice, practice. And one way to do that is by asking their boss if they can present at the next meeting or getting more involved in the community. Whenever they get a chance to practice, that's going to build their confidence. So Chamber of Commerce, for example, or the local...
Carrie,
are you there?
Did we lose you? I thought we lost you for a minute there. You cut out, so can you repeat what you were just saying?
Yes, sure. That ask their boss to present at the next meeting and also try to get more involved in the community. There are plenty of opportunities in the local community Chamber of Commerce or different associations where you can get practice presenting. So those are a couple tips for practice. That's probably the biggest advantage is practicing. That's the way people get better. And either they could sign up for a class or they could practice in their community or ask their boss to present at their next meeting, maybe an update on the project they're working on, for example. And then as far as tips for actual presenting, in addition to practicing, while they're up there, a couple examples, let me think. They can glance at a visual, but then only speak to the audience. Lots of presenters make the mistake of talking to the screen.
Oh, yes.
Or talking to the laptop. And the proper way is to glance at the laptop and speak to the audience. As soon as you have eye contact with someone, that's when you should be speaking. And then after that thought, look at somebody else and tell a thought. After that thought, look at somebody else and tell a thought. People have the habit of scanning the audience, similar to the Brady Bunch way back in the day. Look over their heads, just scan, look over their heads. But instead, try to really connect with one person at a time so they can remember it as one sentence per person in the audience is appropriate.
That is a great tip.
Scanning over their heads. Because scanning over their heads, there wouldn't be that connection.
And everybody in the audience, they want to connect to that speaker. I've been in the audience many times and can recall the speaker catching my eyes, and then immediately you're more drawn into what they're saying, and it just keeps people engaged with you.
And it has to be appropriate. One thought per person is the actual recommended length of time. Have you ever been in an audience where the speaker looks too long and then it's uncomfortable?
Yes.
It definitely has to be a balance, just a sentence per person, not a story per person.
Right.
Because then it could get a little awkward.
A little creepy, depending on who it is. Oh, that's funny.
I have another tip. Oh, and another mistake that presenters always make is they hold something in their hand. They call it the comfort prop. So we like to suggest avoid holding anything in your hand. So if it's a marker and you're about to flip chart, that's fine, as long as you're flip charting. But some people hold a marker when they're not about to flip chart within the next hour.
Right, and it's so distracting. Everybody notices it.
Right, so they just want to hold on to the marker for comfort, and then guess what the whole audience looks at? The marker.
Right, and not hearing a word they're saying, probably.
Yes, they're looking at the marker. What is she going to do? What is he going to do? Is he going to use the marker? Is he just holding the marker? Why is he holding the marker? People use markers, pens, cups, bottles. So anything that's in the speaker's hands, that's where the audience looks.
So true.
So we ask people to keep their hands empty unless they're using it as part of their message, and either if they need a prop, for example, or if they need that marker because they're flip charting. So hands are empty unless it's a prop being used.